And we're talking about middle childhood, ages 7 to 11. And there's a neat little thing on page 324. You have to go back to 322, the end of the last chapter. And then 323 isn't labeled, and 324 is the one with the picture of the guy in the blue shirt with his hat on backwards. I don't know what he's doing. But what's nice about this page is it talks about some developmental landmarks. Got you, Micah. Some developmental landmarks. On page 324. So, do you remember being 7 years old? Were you 4 feet tall and weighed 55 pounds? You don't know. Well, it says that was the average. Were you becoming logical in your thinking skills? Or are you still struggling with becoming logical in your thinking skills? Do you remember reading at age 7? Forming an overall opinion of yourself? Helping others? Developing friendships? Let's see, when I was 7, where would I have been? In 2nd grade? I don't remember any of that stuff. Do any of you remember 7 years old?
Vaguely.
Vaguely? I just remember I have a picture of sitting in a classroom where there were a whole bunch of grades in one room and listening to the teacher teach the older kids stuff because I wanted to learn stuff I wasn't supposed to know. And I don't remember what it was. But I do remember developing some friendships in 2nd grade. I don't recall having an overall opinion of myself. I probably had one, I just don't remember. Okay, at 8, what, that would have been in 3rd grade? Did you participate in organized sports? Any of you participate in any organized, what kind, Logan?
Baseball and basketball.
When you were 8 years old?
Mm-hmm.
Did you enjoy it?
Yeah.
Mike?
Yeah, I think I was in basketball as well.
Did you enjoy it?
Yeah.
I had basketball, and I think I enjoyed the social aspect.
Okay, the social aspect of it.
When I was older.
Did you play sports when you were 8 years old?
No.
Hi, did you play sports at 8?
Yes.
What?
I was in basketball team.
You were on the basketball team? Hannah?
I did soccer and volleyball,
Soccer and volleyball?
I think.
Whoa! She went to an uptown school, didn't she? I don't think we had a basketball goal at our school when I was 8 years old. All we had was a baseball field. And it wasn't organized. We just went out at recess and played baseball. I remember because kids would get too close to the batter and get smacked with a bat. And there was no supervision, and so kids get hurt and run to the schoolhouse bleeding, and the teacher's in there preparing her lessons for the next. There were no supervisors on our playground. We just went out there and did stuff. And if somebody did something that was wrong, one of you girls would run inside and tell the teacher that one of us boys was misbehaving. I do remember that part. We got better at controlling our emotions and showing concern for others. Video games. Were you playing video games at 8? You were?
Yeah.
I didn't encounter my first video game until I was an adult. And I had some little nieces and actually little nephews playing a video game. And I don't remember the name of it. It was one where a guy's on a horse chasing cattle and trying to rope them. Put-um, 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 and you get up there and catch them and get points for catching them. And he had it at a family get-together. That was my introduction to video games. I didn't even have a TV when I was 8 years old. What did you do? Just went outside and thought up things to do. When you were 9, you got better control over your motor skills, which means you became better at sports. Effectively using your organizational strategies to improve your memory, figuring out ways to remember things that you need to know for school, identifying correct ambiguities in speech, where you were mispronouncing words, you start getting those right, showing increased interest in riddles and verbal humor. Do you remember wanting to just listen to people say funny things and say funny things when you were 9 years old? Telling jokes and stories. Increased concern for others and the influence of media. Let's see, what grade was I in when I was 9 years old? 3rd, 4th grade? We still didn't have a TV. 10 years old? Synaptic pruning results in shrinking of some brain areas. Is that why I started losing interest in some things at school and having a greater interest in others? Flexibility in boys decreases. What's that? They don't have the same flexibilities they had before. They get a little stiffer. Knowledge increases. 40,000 word vocabulary. Self-evaluations were more realistic. By the time you were in 5th or 6th grade, did all of you have some subjects in school you were really good at? Did you have some subjects in school you really liked? Which ones did you really like? Or you were good at?
I liked math
You liked math?
I liked
back
math
then.
What?
too. I liked math back then,
When it was
Math.
easy.
Math?
yeah. Yeah, it was easy and I was good at it.
Oh, I liked it because it was easy and I could get it. The rest of the stuff in school was a lot of work. And I liked taking the easy way out. So did I.
Probably
Did-
English.
English? I?
I like, what is it, geography?
Geography?
Mm-hmm.
I like English or like literature.
English and literature?
Same.
English and literature? I don't understand you people. The geography and the math, I get that. The English and the literature and stuff, I just don't understand that stuff. Why would people spend all that time making up stories that aren't real? And why would anyone want to read a story that wasn't real? And my wife says it's fun. I've read some novels. Every now and then, my grandchildren say, "Poppy, you don't remember reading this in school?" And I said, "No, I might have read it, but I don't remember." They said, "You need to read this." So I buy this book on Kindle, for 99 cents or something, and I read it, and I'm going, whoa, what a waste of my time. I forget the last one that one of my grandchild one of my grandchildren mentioned I read. And I said, that was just wearing me out. Internet increases. Did all of you use the internet when you were in 5th grade? You did. That's amazing. I didn't encounter the internet till I was a college professor. Because it didn't exist before then. Average 5 feet tall and 90 pounds. I do remember that would be at 11, 6th or 7th grade. I remember wishing I could get beyond 98 pounds. I was just wanted to reach 100. I was a tall, skinny kid, and I just wanted to get 100 pounds so bad, and I don't know how long it took to get there. I'm thinking I was still 98 pounds when I was in high school. I really was. My grandchildren look at pictures of me as a kid and go, "You were really skinny, Poppy." I said, "I know." But I made up for it. I just kept eating and eating and eating. Girls are 1.5 inches taller and 8 pounds heavier than boys. Now, you girls need to be careful. Page 328 in chapter 10 says this. At age 9, the average girl is the same height and weight as the boys. At age 11, the girl is 1.5 inches taller and 8 pounds heavier. That means that if the boys mess with you, you can just beat them up. But why should a girl be careful about that? Why would you advise an 11-year-old girl to don't be bullying those boys just because you're bigger and stronger and can push them around?
Because they're going to get bigger than you.
Yeah.
Because in a couple of years, they're going to be bigger than you, and they're going to remember. And they're going to come back and start pestering you, and then you'll go into girl mode and tell the teacher that Micah and Logan are picking on you. And it doesn't matter what happened, right, guys? The teacher always takes her side and we get in trouble. That's just the way it is. Because most of our teachers women. And even the men teachers would take the girls' side. It's just disgusting. But just realize, ladies, that they'll come back at you, so don't be throwing your weight around. Page 329 and 330 talks about overweight children. And then it says something about your body mass index. Have you done a body mass index thing recently? Just go to Google and type in BMI, and it'll pop up on the screen, and it'll ask you how tall you are and how much you weigh, and click on calculate. And since I didn't like what I found, told me I was overweight and had run the risk of diabetes and heart disease. So then I go to the Mayo Clinic and click on theirs thinking maybe I'll get a better reading here. And they ask for my height and my weight and my girth. They want to know how many inches it was around my waist. I didn't know, so I got a tape measure and measured it, typed it in, and the Mayo Clinic says I'm in trouble too. If I work at getting down to what the Mayo Clinic and the other calculators tell me I should be down to, I would have to lose I would have to lose what? Like 20 pounds? Can you imagine how skinny I would be if I lost 20 pounds? But according to these body mass people, I would be much healthier. Yeah? Well, guess what else I would be? I'd be hungry all the time. That's what I would be. I told somebody one time that, you know, I enjoy food too much. Now, part of it is I grew up on a farm where you worked a lot, so you could eat like crazy and you'd burn it all up. Then as I get older and have more of a sedentary lifestyle, and I keep eating like that, then I'm not burning it up, so that means I'm just packing it on. And then after a while, I realized, you know, this is not healthy. If I'm having trouble tying my shoe, I probably ought to do something about it. So I said, I'll start working on this and change the way. You guys have helped me. You students have helped me. When I've talked in the past about my appetite for Mountain Dew, the looks I get from students is, you ought to be smarter than that. That stuff is terrible. So I gave it up. And now when I try to stay awake to go watch a grandson wrestle all day on Saturday, I take a little drink of that stuff and whoa, I'm going, this stuff is awful. It's so stout and it's so sweet. So you guys have been good for me in that regard to give up some of my favorite things from the past. But I've concluded that if I'm going to become healthy enough to live a little longer, just to stick around to watch a few more things happen on this earth before I go to heaven, I'm probably going to walk around feeling hungry, because I've developed such a habit of, in fact, I told somebody I don't get hungry because I eat too often. You know what I mean? If I smell food, I go eat it, whether I'm hungry or not. And then my wife cooks me a little meal of something to eat. She's reading about all this healthy stuff, and then she gives me this little portion, and I'm going, oh, can I have some more? She goes, wait 15 minutes, and then it seems like an hour waiting 15 minutes. The idea is that after 15 minutes, I'm not going to be hungry. I'm not hungry in 15 minutes. It's just that what she made was so good. What do I want to do? I want to eat some more of it. It's just a habit I've developed because of the world in which I live. And basically, the book says on page 329, it's talking about overweight children, but it's our whole generation. And I would suggest, look at your body mass index just to say, the sooner you start trying to control it, the healthier you'll be, and the easier it'll be to handle it. But why are so many people overweight in the United States, both children and adults? And the book says, because we eat too many calories, too much fat, and too much saturated fat and too much intake. We're eating larger portions, and we're being less active. So I figured out a way to be more active. On my way home from school, I stop at the grocery store and I go up and down all the aisles looking for bargains. And then finding stuff on sale that it didn't have advertised. And if I stop at 3 stores, I get a pretty good walk in terms of exercise. Just trying to do something to be more active. When the price of gas really went up to about $5 a gallon, I thought, you know what I could do to avoid paying high prices for gas? Buy a bicycle. I only live about 5 miles from campus. What would happen if I rode a bicycle to school? If I rode 5 miles to school and 5 miles home every day on a bicycle? I would probably lose that 20 pounds, right? My body mass index would probably get down to what they consider to be healthy. I have a friend who rides a bicycle all the time. He's about my age. He's already had 2 bypass surgeries. I'm thinking riding a bicycle is not healthy. I don't want to do it anyway. It's too much work. I've ridden one before. When I just had one car and I had to take it into the shop, I'd take my bicycle and put it in the car, and then I'd ride the bicycle home and then ride it back up there once they called me and said the car was ready from the shop. They'd finished working on it. And I thought, this riding a bicycle is a lot of work. But it would be healthier if we did more of that. It'd also be healthier if we walked more. Just spend more time walking places. I mean, I only live, probably 2 miles from the grocery store. Why do I get in the car and drive there? Why don't I walk to the grocery store and then walk to the store and buy stuff and then walk home afterwards? Wouldn't that be healthier? Then why don't I do that?
Gotta carry the bags.
Have to carry the bags. It's just too much work. It's so easier. I mean, life is so easier for us today. And I think with young people, this thing about all this, it's amazing how much it talks about the internet and video games, that younger people have more of a sedentary lifestyle simply because of the things you do for entertainment. I mean, when I was younger, there wasn't that stuff. There wasn't TV to watch, there wasn't internet, so you had to go out. And you actually went outside to play, because if you stay in the house, your mom would think of something for you to do in terms of chores or work. So you went outside and got as far away from the house as you could, so you couldn't even hear her calling you. So you would make sure that you went. And one of my best friends lived 2 miles from my house, so when I went to see him, that means I had to ride my bicycle or walk 2 miles. And sometimes I'd walk a mile and he'd walk a mile. We'd meet each other and walk around with our guns, shooting animals. Then when I had these 2 little girls who read all these books about Bambi and all the animals out there, Disney stuff, they just were shocked that when I was a teenager I shot animals, so I had to quit doing that. But we're less active, we're more sedentary. And the solution, it says on page 330, is eat more nutritional meals. So, what's the most nutritional meal I can have at home? My wife fixes it once in a while. Tilapia with rice. Have you ever had tilapia with rice for a meal? Okay, Logan, does it affect you like it does me? After I've eaten, I can wait 15 minutes, I can wait 30 minutes, and I'm still hungry. And my wife says, "You're still hungry?" I'm going, "Yes." She goes, "Well, what do you want?" I said, "Can you fix me a cheeseburger?" I just need something substantial. Tilapia and rice just don't cut it. But you see what's happened? I've developed such a habit, such an appetite for heavy, weight gain foods that I have to start giving those up. And finally, I told my wife recently, I said, "You know what, Nina? I think I don't want to eat cheeseburgers anymore. When I ask for a cheeseburger, just ask if you can cook the hamburger patty on the George Foreman grill and then cut it up in little pieces and put it in a can of soup. And then I'll only eat about half of it or a third of it if you put it in a can of vegetable soup, and I still taste the meat, but I'm eating all those vegetables." So say, just try to be a little more nutritional in the way you're eating. And also in terms of snacks, do you have any favorite snacks? What are some of your favorite snacks? How many would say potato chips? No? Yes? Yes? Okay, we got to give them up, people. We got to give up the potato chips. They are not good for us. If you really want them, make your own. Just take potatoes and slice them real thin and put them in the oven and bake them without all the grease on them and without all the salt. So what are some other favorite snacks?
I like popcorn.
Popcorn. So, should I buy the popcorn that's no butter or a lot of butter?
A lot of butter.
And which one is healthier?
No butter.
So, it was just on sale at the store recently. 79
No one buys it.
What?
That's because no one buys it.
79 cents for those microwavable packages where 3 in a box. And I had coupons for 50 cents off each box. So I bought about 30 boxes of that stuff. And I said to Nina, I'm going to buy some of the healthy popcorn with no butter in it. And she said, let me pop one of these for you to see what you think. And she popped one, and I said, oh man. So now I've decided, Micah, it's okay to eat the buttered popcorn because the popcorn's a healthy snack. It's better than eating potato chips. Popcorn with butter is better than a bag of potato chips.
There you go.
What's really best for us, have you seen them at the store? Rice cakes. Who eats rice cakes for a snack? Good for you. I tell you, I admire people who can do that. I've tried it. I mean, just standing here thinking about snacks, Fritos and potato chips and corn chips. Oh. And then some dip to go with it. It's like, no, just give it up. Maybe eat some fruit. Get some nuts to snack on. Find something that's healthier. And become more physically active. I've often wondered, could you take a modern day 7 to 11-year-old and say, for every 15 minutes you play video games, you have to spend another 15 minutes on a treadmill or a stair stepper or out running around the house or something. Could we do that to 7 to 11-year-olds to make them healthier in our society? Yes?
When I was in school, like, it was like they made it an epidemic, like child obesity. And if you know, like Nickelodeon is and like Cartoon Network, they would actually like stop airing shows for 30 minutes and try to get kids outside and stuff like that. It was kind of,
And did it work?
I mean, probably
Did
not.
kids
You
go outside?
I don't think so. I mean, I remember it popping on, and I just changed the channel.
Just went find something else to watch.
Yeah.
Hey, there's a nature show on PBS if they're not showing that, so we'll go find something else to watch.
Yeah. But it was just crazy how they were trying to address that issue.
Yeah, because they're trying to address it as a culture, and probably it's going to have to be addressed individually. Like if I want my grandsons to go outside and play sports, I say, hey guys, and I would say to my 2 little grandsons, let's go outside and play kickball. And they would do that because it was the 2 of them against me. And they always won, like 50-0. And we'd play basketball, and it was the 2 of them against Poppy, and they would always win. And they loved just wearing me out. And then a few years ago, I ruptured my Achilles tendon playing basketball with my grandsons. And the doctor who fixed it, I said, how long is it going to take this to heal? And he said, well, for a younger man, it would take about 6 months. For you, it's going to take about a year or a year and a half. He said, what were you doing? And I said, playing basketball with my grandchildren. He said, a guy your age should not be playing basketball. You're going to tear things and break things. Give it up. So I've had to give that up and hope my grandsons just want to go play basketball on their own. But can you see where an adult can encourage kids to be active by going out there, and they will wear you out because the kids like to beat up on the adults. And you just let them win. Don't get proud about it. Just say, hey, I'm going to go out there with the kids and engage in some physical activity, and we'll do things where they have a good time beating me. And just like the 2 of them are playing kickball, and I throw the ball and they kick it over my head, and then I start walking to get it, and they go, I'll go get it for you, Poppy, after both of them run the bases and make 2 points, and they would go get the ball and bring it back, and I throw it again, and they kick it over my head, and they each run the bases and make 2 more points. And one of them kicks it to get on, and the other one kicks it way over my head. And then I'm walking out there to get it because I'm getting old, and they just go, "We'll get it for you." And I'm saying, "Okay, go ahead." The book on page 334 says that children should have 60 minutes of structured physical activity and 60 minutes of free play every day. That's 2 hours of physical activity. Have any of you ever ridden a stationary bicycle? Was it fun? Have any of you ever run on a treadmill? Was that fun? Have you ever done one of those stair stepper things where the handles go back and forth? Was that fun? No. Okay, so find the machine. Here's what I'm thinking. In this day and age, with video and TV and stuff, in fact, could you get on a... I used to watch television while I was on a stair stepper. You can watch TV while you're on a stationary bicycle. So you could actually say to the kids, while you're watching that favorite show of yours, get on this bicycle and ride it. Just simply saying, we probably need to change our thinking about the physical activity. Granted, it'd be better if they were outside, but probably if we're going to address the problem of helping people develop habits that will make them healthy, we probably just need to buy some machines and put them in the house where kids get on those machines and do a workout. Maybe you could find out which machines they like best by going to a gym and having them try them out to see which ones they like best. But it's probably going to cost us some money until page 336 and 337 talk about the benefits of organized sports. Until you get involved in organized sports. And Logan, you were involved in organized sports?
Mm-hmm.
And Micah, you were too? And who else was in organized sports?
I think.
And did when you were involved in organized sports, did you get 2 hours of physical activity in every day? My grandson, who plays high school basketball, every day they have basketball practice for an hour. And that's pretty strenuous, isn't it? So I'm thinking, okay, he's getting an hour worth of practice there. Now, if he comes home and he spends 30 minutes out in the driveway shooting baskets to improve his basketball shooting skills, then it's like he could probably get in. So if probably we need to encourage more kids to get involved in organized sports, because when you're involved in sports, at least I've noticed this with my grandsons, when they're involved in sports, the coaches usually tell them, don't drink carbonated beverages because they are not healthy for you. And when I ask if they want to stop at a fast food restaurant and get something to eat, they usually want to order something healthy. So I think getting kids involved in organized sports today is one of the best things we can do to help address the problem of what the book talks about as like you said, Micah, an epidemic of I'm not going to say obesity, an epidemic of just being overweight. Because our society has too much food, we have an appetite for stuff that's not nutritious, and we don't get enough exercise or activity to burn it up. So probably getting kids involved in organized sports. But, okay, there's the physical activity, there's the emotional and social and teamwork benefit. Okay, definitely physical activity. Did any of you play organized sports for a coach that just emotionally destroyed people? Do any of you ever have a coach that just beat people down? Did you always have good coaches that encouraged you? I'm thinking that the coaches who beat people down ought to just be fired. Because the young person who's trying to get the physical activity needs the emotional support more than they need a winning record. But our society has become so competitive, we've kind of damaged, so to speak, the reputation of organized sports by the way we've let the wrong kind of people be in charge of things. Socially, I mean, just like you said, playing basketball, it was more fun having that bond with the teammates than it was. That's one of the reasons as a young adult, I played basketball with our church group just because it was fun to get out and hang out with them. And one of the guys was really competitive on our team, and he would go, "Tom, hurt yourself a little bit." I said, "Hey, it's just a game. If I'll try to stop the guy, but if he gets by me, I'm not going to fall down trying to stop him. I'm not going to put myself in harm's way. If he's driving hard for the basket and I've got position, and I know if I stand there and he runs over me, they'll call him for charging, I don't care." The thought of whacking the back of my head on the floor so I could shoot a free throw just isn't worth it. I'll just move aside and let him go by. And as soon as I move, then what happens when he runs into me? They call the foul on me. Hey, I don't care. And this teammate would say, "That's your problem, Tom. You don't care." And I'd say, "That's your problem. You care too much about winning. I'm just out here having a good time." So maybe we ought to change organized sports to be more of a good time thing. Have you ever, any of you played in an organized sport where they didn't keep score? What did you play?
It was when I was in really young basketball.
Was it called upward basketball?
No, but I've heard of that.
Okay, I think that's so cool that they don't keep score. They're just helping the kids learn how to play the game. And some of these parents just go bonkers. They don't keep score. What's that all about? And I'm thinking it's about getting some physical activity, about getting emotional support, about developing some social skills, learning teamwork and cooperation and taking turns and learning to deal with failure. My grandsons, 2 of them, play baseball and just love it immensely. But what's a good batting average in baseball? 300? 300 is a good batting average in baseball. Do you know what 300 means? It means you go up to bat 10 times and 3 times you hit the ball and get on base. And the other 7 times you get put out. You either ground out, fly out, or strike out, or get called out by the umpire. And can you imagine if school was like that, if grading was like that? If you were successful, if you got 30% on all of your exams and all of your homework? But I tell them, I said, just do the math, guys, do the math. One time, one of my grandsons was playing in a tournament one weekend, and he played 2 games in a row, and he had 5 hits. He was up to bat 5 times, and all 5 times he got a hit and got on base. The next day, he was playing a 3rd game, and his team was ahead by 1 run, and he came up to bat, and the other coach called timeout. And I told my grandson later, I said, you know what the coach told that pitcher when he went out there? This boy had 5 for 5. He's batting 1,000. Don't you dare throw him a pitch that he can hit. So he threw all the pitches outside, and my grandson just stood there and watched them go by and then walked to first base. But it's the only time it's happened in his life, and it was so cool. He just had a freak accident where he got 5 hits in a row. But most of the time, 7 out of 10 times, you're not going to make it. Learning the rules. And what's one of the rules? Well, sportsmanship is another part of it. Learning to be a good sport about the whole thing. I mean, we have these rules, Then we have officials who enforce the rules, and then the officials who enforce the rules sometimes make mistakes, right? Because they're human. And sportsmanship says, hey, sometimes they made a mistake in my favor, sometimes they make a mistake not in my favor. What did I have? I make a video of my grandsons when they're playing baseball, and my grandson hit the ball, and he's running to first, and I'm showing him running to first, and the infielder picked up the ball and threw it to first base, and it goes smack, smack. So is he safe or out? If the ball goes smack and then his foot hit the bag right after that,
Out.
he's out. The umpire called him safe. And he's standing on base. And later when I sent him the video, I said, you got to look at this, bud. You got a free one this time. So just remember, the next time they call it and it goes the other way. And of course, what happened when the umpire said safe? What did the other team's fans do? No, no, no. But they don't change it. But sportsmanship says, hey, you live with the consequences of the way the coach calls it. But I really think we ought to get more kids involved in more organized sports. And to make that happen, we need to take organized sports and eliminate all the coaches who don't make for healthy, organized sports, who don't make it all the things it ought to be for the sake of the kids, for their physical well-being, their emotional well-being, their social well-being. I mean, I actually know coaches who will take a young kid who's a good pitcher and have him throw too many pitches just to win a game, not thinking about the fact that he could ruin that child's pitching arm for the rest of his life. That to me is so sad. And teamwork, working together, cooperating, taking turns, coping with failure, following the rules. I think coaches who teach kids how to break the rules without getting caught ought to be fired immediately. And sportsmanship. Page 340 and 341 talk about safety issues. When you're 7 to 11, what kind of safety issues in the home, in the car, as a pedestrian, on a bicycle, around water, what kind of safety issues have to do with the home? What do 7 to 11-year-olds do around the house that could be dangerous?
Play with fire.
Why do they want to go in the kitchen and mess around with that stove?
They're curious.
They're just curious. Outlets? I mean, we put those little plastic things in there for the little kids so they won't hurt themselves. Leave them in for the 7 to 11-year-olds. They know better, but they're so curious they're going to get themselves in trouble. What do you tell them to do when they get in the car?
Seatbelt.
Buckle up. Buckle up. Fix the doors so they can't open them. Those automatic locks. What about being a pedestrian?
Look both ways.
Before you cross the street? And which side of the street should you walk on? Facing the traffic or with your back to the traffic?
Face it.
So you can always jump in the ditch when the oncoming car doesn't move over and give you room to walk on the edge of the road. Riding your bicycle? Where's the safest place to ride a bicycle?
On the sidewalk.
On the sidewalk. Now, that's exactly right. So what happens when I tell my grandchildren to ride their bicycle on the sidewalk?
They ride in the road.
Because don't the policemen say, don't ride your bicycle on the sidewalk? Now, see, I would say, okay, can you guarantee that all the people driving cars are going to watch out for the boys and girls on bicycles? And the answer is no. So I'm saying, until you can make the world a safer place for 7 to 11-year-olds, I'm going to tell them to ride on the sidewalks. The book also talks about water. Water. What kind of safety issues involve water?
Drown in a pool.
How could a 7 to 11-year-old drown?
They don't know how to swim.
So what happens? So what do we do to keep that from happening?
Give them swimming lessons.
Have you had swimming lessons?
Mm-hmm.
Have all of you had swimming lessons? Good. Someone said we're going to teach you how to swim so you're not as apt to drown. Then why would some kids who know how to swim end up drowning?
Because they're showing off.
They're showing off. They get careless. They run out of energy. So you have to teach them water safety. You probably ought to teach them something else about water, and that is that you need to drink a lot of it to stay hydrated. In the summertime, you sweat, so you know you ought to drink water. In the wintertime, the humidity is such that you don't feel yourself sweating, but you need to force yourself to drink a lot of water because you get dehydrated and then you're more apt to get sick. And it even talks about weather issues. So it's up to 40 degrees out there. So that means tomorrow morning I'll come to school in a short sleeve shirt. No, I won't. What's the weather going to be in the morning? It's going to be in the 20s. So put a coat on. Put a hat on. Why don't 7 to 11-year-olds want to wear a hat? It will mess up their hair. So mess it up. So bundle up, dress appropriately for the weather. Page 343 to 346 talks about child sexual abuse. Now, this to me was really shocking when I read this years ago. The victims, most victims know their abusers. In other words, in most cases where children, 7 to 11-year-olds, suffer sexual abuse, they know the person who abused them. And the other thing that to me was shocking was half of the cases, the adolescents are perpetrators. In other words, teenagers are the ones who are sexually abusing 7 to 11-year-olds. And I'm going, what is going on here? What kind of stuff are teenagers watching on television or on the internet or in video games that would encourage them to sexually abuse a 7 to 11-year-old? And whoever's promoting that stuff, it seems to me like, okay, haven't we had a big thing in our country here just recently where people who make movies have people with power in the movie making industry have been sexually abusing actresses, taking advantage of them, and now people are starting to speak up. And the reason they didn't speak up before was because if you did, you wouldn't get to work in the industry. And now they're starting to speak up, and people are losing their fortunes, and they're losing their reputations, and losing their occupations. And I'm thinking, anyone who makes any kind of internet film or movie or anything or music that encourages adolescents to sexually abuse a 7 to 11-year-old, those people ought to be held criminally guilty. It's kind of like if you drive the car and your friend robs money from McDonald's, then you also go to jail for being an accomplice. There ought to be a lot of people who are considered accomplices to sexual abuse today, and they ought to be penalized for it. And maybe out of some of the stuff that's going on today, they might decide it's time for us to put a stop to some of this stuff that's promoting sexual abuse. Page 347 to 356 talks about children with special needs. And when it talks about special needs, it just means they have difficulties learning, or they have difficulties controlling their behavior, or they have some kind of physical disability, or an emotional or a mental disability. Page 349 talks about ADHD, attention deficit hyperactive disorder. And the most frequently used treatment is medication. Does anyone know what medication does to an ADHD child? If he's he's attention deficit hyperactive disorder, he has trouble paying attention because he's so hyperactive. So let's give him some medicine that slows down his hyperactivity. So now he's sitting in class not being hyper anymore, but now you've turned him into almost a zombie where he still can't pay attention. So there probably needs to be some other ways of handling this. Page 351 and 352 talk about speech and learning disorders and all the things that actually there's a lot of things that are being done in our culture. Lots of people become speech therapists and study learning disabilities to help students overcome their problems that they encounter, the difficulties they encounter, the disabilities that they have. Page 353 talks about autism. And 355 talks about federally funded educational services. Do you know of any federally funded educational services? I have let's see, what would this be? My wife's uncle had a son who was legally blind. His vision was so bad, he was labeled legally blind when he took his vision test. He was having trouble in school. And he went to school in Belton. And his parents went to the school district and said, "Do you have anything that would help my son in school?" And they said, "No, we don't have any help for your child." And they were telling me about that at a family get-together, and I said, "Whoa," I said, "write this down." In fact, I got a piece of paper and I wrote down Public Law 94142. Write that on this paper, and it was passed in 1975. And here's what Public Law 94142 says. Every child is entitled to free and appropriate public school education, and children with learning disabilities or with disabilities must have an individualized education plan. And the plan must be least restrictive and, as much as possible, include the students in the regular classroom programs. So I said, take this information back to the Belton School District and tell them that you just learned about Public Law 94142 and how that they were required by law to provide assistance to your child. And the district immediately went out and purchased a machine that would take all of the books he read and magnify them so the letters were so big he could see them. And they gave him that machine so he could take it to all of his classes and magnify all the stuff he had to read in school. Now, why didn't they offer to do that before the parents cited Public Law 94142?
Because it's going to cost money.
It's going to cost money, and they didn't want to spend the money. If we spend it for this child, then what's going to happen? All of the other children with visual disabilities are going to want one too. And the answer is yes. And you should provide them for it. So that's why that law was passed, because a lot of local school districts weren't willing to spend the money to help children who are disabled. So you might want to make a note of that. And if you're ever in a situation where you know a child with a disability and the public school isn't doing what it should be doing to help accommodate for the child's disability, just simply cite Public Law 94142, and believe it or not, you'll get the school district's attention real fast. Because if they don't accommodate them, they can get themselves in trouble with the federal government, which means they lose a lot of their federal funding. And it happened back then. The Belton School District got a ton of money from the federal government because the air base here used to be full of military people. So they got all this government from the military to help subsidize their school system, because the school system was educating all these military kids. Okay, chapter 11 talks about 7 to 11-year-olds, middle children, but now we're talking about their cognitive development rather than their physical development. And it starts out on page 365 talking about some cognitive concepts. Class inclusion. We did some of that the other day talking about cars. What kind of things would you include in a class called a car, called a truck, called a pickup, called a semi-trailer, called an SUV? You follow me? Class inclusion simply says what's included in that class. Let's think of a class that 7 to 11-year-olds might be dealing with, and that would be things to drink out of. So, what would a 7 to 11-year-old be thinking? What would they be seeing in their mind when you said things to drink out of? What would be one of the things they would mention?
A cup.
A cup?
Like a water bottle.
A water bottle?
Glass.
A glass? A coffee cup? Now, when I was 7 to 11, if you would have had this exercise at school, have you ever seen a coffee cup sitting on a saucer? Did you ever have coffee served to you that they serve you the cup on a saucer? I would have said, when I was 7 to 11, when it said things to drink out of, I would have said a saucer. Did any of you ever see somebody taking coffee that was really hot and pouring it into the saucer to cool it off, some of it, and then picking the saucer up and drinking it out of the saucer? None of you ever saw that? I saw my father do that every morning. Now, what's your reaction as a 7 to 11-year-old when I say a saucer is something you could drink out of? You go, no way. Because I just saw an unusual phenomena in the environment that I grew up in. What about a cereal bowl? Can you drink out of a cereal bowl? Who drinks out of a cereal bowl? When do you drink out of one?
After the cereal's gone.
When you finish your Cheerios and there's still milk in the bowl, right? You go, no, you dip it out with the spoon until it's all gone. Maybe you do, because someone taught you that. But what do the rest of us do? We pick the bowl up and drink out of the bowl. What else would a 7 to 11-year-old talk about drinking out of? A paper cup? Any of you ever drink water out of those little cone-shaped cups? A water bottle. Oh, we talked about these kind of water bottles. What would they be called? Sports bottles? A thermos? So that's what it means by class inclusion, is what's included in that class. Seriation is just putting things in order. The best way I help 7 to 11-year-olds think about seriation is I happen to have a huge big container of buttons that were collected by my wife's Aunt Margie. I don't know why, but whenever she wore clothes out, she cut the buttons off and put them in a big container before she took the clothing and used it for mops or whatever she was going to use it for. Even if she just threw it away, she still kept the buttons. So I just take a bunch of these buttons and would pour them on everybody's table and then say, and seriation is put them in some kind of order. And most 7 to 11-year-olds, when you say do the seriation thing, they will put them in order from smallest to largest. But every now and then somebody will put them in order with how many holes they have in the button. 2 holes, 3 holes, 4 holes. Or they might put them in order by color. A certain color followed by another color. A major limitation, it says on page 365, in age 7 children's thinking is their use of mental operations is still closely tied to concrete materials, to the context, and to the situation involved. So anytime, if you want to help a 7 to 11-year-old develop their cognitive abilities, give them concrete materials to work with. Just give them stuff. Put buttons out there for them to play with. Put sticks out there for them to play with. Just give them some concrete materials to touch, and that'll help them when they sort things out. And do any of you remember playing with dominoes, but you didn't play dominoes?
Mm-hmm.
What'd you do with them?
Build stuff.
You stacked them up to see how tall you could get it before they fell over. Logan and I did that. Did anybody else, Micah, anybody else take dominoes and stack them up? And that was sometimes more fun than playing the game where you had to match the numbers or whatever you do with it. So just give them things to play with and let them just think about it. Page 367 talks about models of memory, how we remember things, how we store things. When I said think of something to drink out of, and then I said, what's the picture? That's the visual part of storage. What's the picture you have of something to drink out of? Does your picture have a color to it? Was your picture a clear glass container? Or was your picture something made out of plastic? And was it a little plastic juice glass? Or was it a big, large size McDonald's cup? What's the visual picture? And then verbal is simply word descriptions. And then if I brought some models of drinking utensils in here and I dropped them on the floor or dropped them on the table, would the paper cup sound different than the plastic cup? Than the McDonald's cup? And would the McDonald's cup sound different than the hard plastic cup that I drink juice out of at home? And would that sound different than the coffee cup. You're going to drop a coffee cup on the table? Not a glass one, a plastic one. You follow? So that they actually hear the difference. So memory has to do with visual, verbal, and acoustic. In fact, that's where I got in trouble with cars. Have you ever heard an electric car go by? No. Because why?
Quiet.
Because they're so quiet you don't hear them. And the way I used to cross the street at Calvary was to just, instead of turning my head to look for a car, I would just listen for one. And then when the electric cars arrived, I'm walking out to the parking lot, and I stop and I listen, I don't hear any cars, and I step out there and I just beep beep. Electric cars have the awful sounding horns, don't they?
Mm-hmm.
And the guy honked and I'm going, whoa, I didn't hear you coming. And he goes, no, nobody hears me coming. And so now we've all acclimated to that, where I can't go by hearing anymore, so I have to turn my head and look to see if there's an electric car coming down the road. That's all part of just your memory developing as time goes on. We record things in chunks. You know your telephone number, don't you? 816-331-8607. That's the number that's on the syllabus. Why did I say it like that? Why didn't I just go 816-331-8607?
Because you memorized it.
Because I memorized it in what's called chunks. You chunk things together to memorize them. And you also connect things to other information. Page 369 talks about short-term memory. It's about 30 seconds long. So when I leave here today, I'll get in the car and I'll call my wife and I'll say, well, I'm going to stop at the store. Do you need anything? And she'll say, yes, I need some. And she'll say something. Now, if I decide I'm going to just remember that and I drive on to the store and it takes more than 30 seconds to get to the store, if I call her here, I leave here, I go down to the corner, I turn, I get on 71 highway, I head down the road, I take the exit and go to the Price Chopper here in Belton. And what happens when I get into the parking lot and I stop the car? I remember talking to my wife on the phone, and I remember asking her if she needed something from the store, because I do that every day. What don't I remember?
Stuff she wanted you to get.
What she wanted me to get. Why? What happened? It evaporated after about 30 seconds. Okay, I know what I can do to keep it from evaporating. I can just keep saying it over and over and over again, right? I'll keep repeating it so it won't evaporate in 30 seconds. Yeah, and that works until I pull up on the interstate on 49, and then there's a big old truck coming, and I'm sitting there concentrating on what I'm supposed to buy at the store, and he about runs over me, and I'm going, whoa, you better pay attention to what you're doing, Tom. And so what do? I stop rehearsing what she wanted, and I start paying attention to the traffic, and by the time I take the exit to go to Price Chopper, what's happened? It's evaporated again. That's what it does. It just evaporates. It's gone. I've forgotten it. Now, sometimes I can use little gimmicks to remember it. And I don't know why. If she said, for example, if my wife said, I need some pepper, I'm going, okay, pepper and pencil start with the same letter. You got that? So I'll put my pencil in my pocket upside down. Then when I get to Price Chopper and I go inside and I'm going, why is my pencil upside down? I will say what? Oh, Nina needs some pepper. Is that dumb? It works, doesn't it? And if you've never tried it, it's like and see, that's the part where it talks about under this models of memory, connecting information. Connecting information. And you can go on the internet and just Google memory devices and find all kinds of cool stuff. And some of them you'll like and some of them you won't. The ones you don't like, don't try them. The ones that look interesting, try them and see what happens. And what happened is that connection made it stay in my memory because it went from short-term memory to long-term memory. Although if I would have kept rehearsing till I got to the store, it's just that focusing on rehearsing kind of keeps me from paying attention to other things I need to do. So you look for ways to keep stuff stored for more than 30 seconds. And that's, you can rehearse it, you can relate it to other things, or I can stop up here at the traffic light and say, what was that again you wanted, Nina? And I can write it down. And then I'll have it on a piece of paper or a little index card or something I keep in the car. So I'll have the information written down and then I'll have it for later. Another thing you can do is say it out loud. Like what? Nina wants pepper. Nina wants pepper. And just saying it out loud and hearing it seems to make it stick. Probably what else I would do any of you know a little riddle that has to do with pepper? Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers and Nina wants some pepper. And somehow connecting that to that goofy riddle that I have in my head, when I get out of the store at Price Chopper and walk in the door, it'll come back to me. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But try some of these methods to see which one worked best for you. Page 369 in the book and 370 say long-term memory is permanent. That means that the original phone number we had when I was a teenager in Oklahoma is still stored away in my mind somewhere. I just can't recall it. I can't find it. But it's there. But if I were to go back and find an old telephone directory for when I was a teenager and look up my dad's name and see the phone number, I would, oh yeah, now I remember, that was our phone number. So we basically store a whole bunch of stuff in long-term memory. We just can't retrieve it. It's just there. Have you ever saved something to your computer and then couldn't figure out where you saved it and can't find it later? Most computers now are so programmed in such a way that it makes it easier to find stuff. But the early ones, you could lose stuff very easily because they didn't have all the modern technology, all of the potential artificial intelligence stuff that computers have today. Yeah, artificial intelligence. Who's that Cortina that interrupted my math class today to ask me if I had any questions on my tablet? If I have a question, Cortina, I'll call you. Otherwise, leave me alone and don't interrupt my math class. My daughter and son-in-law have this little lady in the living room named Alexa. Any of you have her in your house? They go, Alexa. And they say play and they have her pick out some music. So I go, Alexa, play some cowboy poetry. She goes, I don't know cowboy poetry. What good's Alexa if she doesn't know cowboy poetry? Have any of you read any good old cowboy poetry? It's so cool. These guys who used to work with cattle and on chuck wagons and live around campfires, they wrote these poems and wrote these songs. I'm not talking about modern country music. I'm talking about that real old-fashioned cowboy stuff. Well, maybe you'll go find it on the internet sometime and discover something that's new and interesting. Okay, long-term memory is permanent, and long-term memory is unlimited, it says on page 369 and 370. However, it says there can be problems with the initial encoding and with the storage and with accessing and retrieving the information. So, how it was encoded, how it's being stored, how you access it, and how you retrieve it can all keep you, even though it's there, it can keep you from finding it. Page 372 talks about semantic memories and episodic memories. What's a semantic memory? What's semantics? Have you ever heard someone talk about semantics? You say you're driving a car, I say you're driving a van. Well, what are they really driving? They're driving a Honda Odyssey. So what is a Honda Odyssey? It's a van. Well, technically speaking, but it's also a car in the sense that it's a mode of transportation. So you see, that's semantics. Semantic memory has to do with the words we use to represent the concepts we have in our heads. When I say house, do all of you live in a house? Say no, I live in a dormitory. Okay, when you're not in a dormitory, before you lived in a dormitory, did you live in a house? Did you call it something else? Did you have another name for it besides house? Did you call it your home?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Or was it your residence? It was your home? It was where I live? You understand semantics? The words we use to describe the place where we went to sleep at night during our 7 to 11-year-old time frame. Our house, our residence, our home, where I live. Any other words that you'd use to describe that?
Well, it could be like an apartment or something. You know.
Someone could say, I live in an apartment. Someone could say, I live in an igloo. I live in a teepee. I live in a tent. Now, do you have a visual picture in your head of the house you lived in when you were 7 to 11? So, do you have other pictures besides that picture? Now, see, I have the house I lived in when I was 7 to 11. I mean, when I said that, do you have a picture of a house in your mind? I do. And when I said house, the one I saw was a picture of the first house I bought. No, it wasn't. It was a picture of the first new house I bought. Prior to that one, I bought a used house, but the predominant picture in my head was the first house I bought that was a brand new home built from scratch. Because, see how that's more meaningful to me, so that replaces the other pictures. But when I say, what about when you were 7 to 11? Yeah, I remember that house and I have a picture of it. And then it's like, and what about the first place you lived when you got married? Oh, that was an apartment. And what about the second place you lived after you had a baby and your wife didn't want to live in an apartment anymore? Oh, that was this little house. And see, and I have all these different visual images of what's called a house. And for some reason, the house I live in now doesn't seem to register as one of those. I seem to reach back in my past for visual representations of what I would call the house. And that's what they mean by semantic memories. The words we use to describe the concepts that we have in mind. And it's time to stop. So we'll, on Wednesday, start with episodic memories. And you have a nice day.